thank you for the introduction. I'm going to bring the focus again to policies, to Europe, and especially I will focus on energy. So how to get to the next slide? Okay. I think these slides can be resumed very shortly, that the ICT sectors being office equipment, broadband, data center, even the end use in the homes, the modems, the set-top boxes, all of these account for a large share of EU consumption and is increasing, of large share of electricity consumption, of course, and is the fast-growing load that we have in the European Union. The EU energy policy is not just based on the environment, it's very important, our commitment to Kyoto, but it's also about making our companies more competitive, using less energy to produce more GDP or values, and also about security supply. We import a lot of primary energy sources, and we would like to reduce this dependence through renewables, of course, but also through reducing the energy demand. We have a lot of 2020 targets. The first one is the climate change. We are already committed to reduce emission by 2020 by 20% compared to 1990. But if there will be a new international agreement, we are ready to go down to 30%, minus 30%. There is a target on renewables, and I heard a lot of emphasis by the ICT sector, especially the telecom operator, to use more renewables. And now the target is to use 20% renewables in our consumption by 2020. And finally, we have the energy consumption target, minus 20%, which most probably is the most challenging one, but is key to achieve the climate change target and also key to achieve the renewable target. Only if we bring down the total consumption, we will succeed in having 20% renewables in the European Union. And energy efficiency has been recognized as the fastest and cheapest way to comply with our Kyoto commitment and the 2020 CO2 reduction commitment. How we get minus 20%, the Commission put out an action plan with 70 and more actions and policy recommendations to be implemented at EU and member state level in October. This was done in October 2006. And what is important to note is that the strategy is to mobilize all the actors, the public, the citizens, the governments and at the national and local level, and the market actors. And this is a message to the telecom operators, to the manufacturers, to the ICT sector, to have everybody plays his role, even if the total contribution to energy or to CO2 emission is not that big. It's important that everybody does his own part and his own job. Otherwise, we will never achieve. If we leave only to the emission trading to do the job, or to the steel industry, to the chemical industry, is not the way to go. But citizens and companies in all sectors have to do their share. And we want basically to create in the EU the most dynamic society in terms of more efficient infrastructure, buildings, appliance process. And here very much comes the role that the ICT can play in making this possible, helping the buildings to become more efficient, the transport, and we heard a lot on this morning. I mainly focus today on the impact on the energy consumption of the ICT sector and which policy do we have in place to reduce this energy consumption. A first policy that we have since 2005 is called the Eco Design of Energy Using Product, or the EUP directive. It's a framework directive. It affects products that are traded across the European Union based on Article 95 and basically set environmental requirements for these products. And a lot of these environmental requirements are energy consumption requirements. It's a framework directive, so does not create obligation, but establish a process by which obligation on individual products like television, refrigerators, light bulbs, and also some of ICT products can be set. It has a structure in such a way that creates a lot of consultation and discussion with stakeholders, and the member state also have the role to play under the comitology process. It may result in a lot of different policy options like efficiency requirement, minimum efficiency requirement, energy labels, agreements, and all these are always based on very thorough studies that looks at all the technology available, the life cycle cost, the impact on the stakeholders, and so recommendations are done by these studies and then discussed with stakeholders and member states. Already 14 different products are under scrutiny in the study. Some already completed the studies. There's a website which shows the result, and now the consultation process is well advanced. For example, a regulation on standby, one for simple set of boxes, one for external power supplies. Another important policy for this sector is the Energy Star program, which is for the so-called office equipment. It was mentioned today as being an important share of the energy consumption in this sector. And this is basically the computers, the monitors, the printers, the copiers that are in our offices and also at home. And for this type of products, the European Union decided to use the Energy Star program, programs established in 1994 by the US Environmental Protection Agency. And this program, as from year 2000, is also shared by the EU, which is basically co-deciding with the US to set levels, and manufacturers are encouraged to apply this logo also in Europe, showing which product have a low energy consumption. There is a general principle that this label should only qualify the best 25% of the market. And right now, there is a process to review the specification for computers, imaging equipment, and for monitors, and to introduce energy performance criteria across the whole energy usage pattern, not just the traditional standby or off mode, but also the active mode. And more information on the Energy Star is at the European Energy Star website. Last point in my presentation is about the code of conduct. They have been mentioned in several speeches already today, and I'm very pleased to hear that manufacturers and operators are aware of the code of conduct. They try to implement in their daily operations. Is an activity by the European Commission, and we at the Joint Research Center, a technical part of the European Commission, manage these code of conducts. Is a first step to introduce policies. It creates awareness in industry. It gathers together experts, both from industry, from member states, from NGOs, and start a dialogue and try to identify solutions. So, for example, 2 years ago, we understood that broadband was a concern, and we called all the broadband players, the telecom operators, the manufacturers, and the NGOs to discuss what we can do to reduce energy consumption in broadband. And experts from BT, from Telecom Italia, from manufacturers company came around our table and showed numbers, solution, and we started to work from there. The end product are basically some levels that we try to impose, voluntary levels, and then we ask companies to commit. Individual company, would you produce equipment meeting this specification, or would you, in your purchasing operation on your procurement, commit to purchase only equipment that complies with these levels? We started back in 1999 with external power supply. It was also quoted. It was very important for mobile telephones, set-top boxes, and then I say in 2005 we also started with work on broadband, and very recently also on data centers, which is another larger sector of consumption of ICT. And for example, the external power supply has been rather successful, has made a shift from the inefficient linear power supply to the very efficient switch mode, and now the EU is in the process of regulating power supply. The code of conduct has helped to create a market awareness, a lot of products offering on the efficient side, and now we are ready to have a more stringent policy option, which is really to take out from the market, as from 2010, most probably, the inefficient power supply, external power supplies. As I said, the aim is to raise awareness, to start a process, to offer a common European solution, say a common level, We hear a lot in a lot of sectors. We work in many sectors in efficiency in buildings, on the motors, on appliances, and it's very easy to claim we do something good for the environment, our products are green. But at least with the code of conduct, we are right to set these levels and say if you want to be really efficient, you should aim to these levels. And of course, we also review these levels, and they're not statics because technology changes. This is very important for procurement, for a company who buys a large amount of this equipment. And last but not least, it's not only about the consumption of the telecom operators, which is huge, we understand, but it's also about the consumption of their clients. And it's very easy to be very efficient in your own operation and save your operation expenses. But then what about the citizen? What about if you put there a modem which is using 10 watt all the time, and then you put there a set box another 30 watt, and then you put maybe a router, and this poor citizen, without knowing, in his home finds equipment which is on all the time for more than 100 watt, and this costs money. So it's important that it's also an engagement to supply to their customers efficient equipment, which is also reducing the total consumption when it's aggregated by the millions of homes that we have in the European Union. I can skip these slides because it's been already highlighted. Our broadband is growing, is a large consumption. And as I say, the code of conduct is looking at the operator side, but also at the consumer side, all the equipment that is going to be installed. And you can see the list. And in fact, on the consumer side, the list is much longer than on the network side. We have already some companies signed, and we understand many more companies will sign. And it's also a dynamic process. We have, every year we'll meet, we review the levels, we see what needs to be adapted. And it's not like if you do not produce 100% of your equipment, you cannot sign. It's basically an important commitment that you will commit to produce equipment in this range. And of course, if there are difficulties, economic difficulties, operation difficulties, you can always discuss with us. We can find a solution. And the other, one more, okay. The other code of conduct which we are working right now is data centers. And this is again for the telecom operators, but also for the banks, for the supermarket, and a lot of other companies, for the operators of data center on behalf of other people. Is very complex. There is already a lot of work in the US, Green Grid, DOE, EPA. We wanted to create the same awareness and a common platform for discussing and setting targets in Europe, and we have been very successful. And we will create two categories, one where the participants are the people operating and owning data centers, and then all the vendors, consultant, service provider, endorsing this code of conduct. And we look at, again, simple operation, day-to-day operation, switch off what is needed, manage cooling in these data centers to design a very efficient new data center, most probably using on-site generation or renewables. I can come to the conclusion. So it's important that we focus on the contribution that this sector can do to reduce its own consumption, both in its own operation and in their clients' home or offices. And because this consumption is growing, the possibility to reduce consumption on there, we've seen an example of reduction of 50% or more in equipment. And as I say, the code of conduct is the first policy we have which complements other policies like the EUP, the Energy Star, or the energy performance of building. And you can find all the information about the code of conduct at this website. Thank you again for your attention.